Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, where imagination floats you softly into dreamland. Breathe, rest, and sleep.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories. Take a moment to settle in, letting the day's concerns drift like clouds passing across a wide and open sky. Feel your body grow heavy against any pillows or blankets, your breath softening in slow waves. Tonight, you'll travel into a world touched by a gentle hush, following the faint footprints of a tale known as the Pied Piper's Silent Tune, a rainy day soothing bedtime story. If you listen closely, you can already sense the patter of raindrops, delicate as tiny footsteps tapping on window panes. Let this soft, rhythmic sound calm your thoughts, encouraging each one to melt into the kind darkness of night. Allow your eyes to become heavier as you breathe in gently, welcoming a sense of warmth in your chest. Exhale slowly, letting tension ebb away like receding water on a quiet shore. Can you feel the coolness of the evening air? Picture a soft glow somewhere in the distance, a light that guides you deeper into your well-deserved rest. Every part of you, from the crown of your head to the tips of your toes, can relax now, released from the day's busy hum. In this moment, you are free to simply be, comfortable and at ease. Notice how your breath moves in unison with the faint drizzle outside, as if each inhale matches the hush of raindrops meeting earth. That gentle interplay soothes your thoughts, reminding you that you're safe to drift into a story that will lull you into peaceful slumber. As the world around you dims, let the subtle gray tones of a rainy day seep into your imagination, softening any sharp edges or restless worries. Inhale again, feeling the expansion of your lungs. Exhale and imagine the noise of daily life evaporating, replaced by the rhythmic hush of distant rainfall. Breathe in and sense calm energies filling you. Then breathe out to release any tension left lingering in your muscles. Feel the swirl of serenity wrap around you like a comforting blanket, ready to transport you to a realm of quiet wonder. Before we begin our journey in earnest, allow one more slow inhale, letting your chest rise. Then exhale, inviting your shoulders to loosen. Let the upcoming scene unfold gently in your mind's eye. An old cobblestone street glistening in the rain, the hush of a hidden melody carried on the breeze. You are standing at the threshold of a soothing adventure, and now is the time to step across. Close your eyes if you like, or simply gaze at the soft darkness in the room. Let the story flow toward you, tranquil and unhurried. With another deep breath, let your awareness glide from the present moment into a serene narrative, woven from gentle drizzle, dimly lit lanterns, and a silent tune that holds many secrets, yet promises no discord. As you drift, the perspective shifts, so you no longer need to hold yourself in the center. Feel free to let the story unfold on its own, carrying you along in a mellow, dreamlike current. Long ago, on a day touched by an ever-present mist, a quiet figure moved through a town lined with time-worn buildings. The Pied Piper was known to some as a mystical musician, a wanderer whose stories had been whispered around tavern fires and children's cradles for generations. Yet on this particular day, no music followed his steps. Rain slicked the cobblestones, turning the streets into mirrors of fleeting reflections, and people stayed inside, listening to the unrelenting downpour. Curtains were drawn, and wooden shutters clapped softly in the breeze, almost mimicking a steady beat. No one could say for certain how the Pied Piper arrived. Perhaps he slipped through the alleys at dawn, his worn boots quietly tapping their own rhythm. Or maybe he had been there all along, blending with the backdrop of the sleepy town. Whichever way he came, his cloak was damp at the edges, and he carried a long, carved flute tucked beneath it, a flute he did not raise to his lips. The hush of his presence was like the hush of the rain, almost companionable, neither startling nor intrusive. The town itself was modest in size, a place shaped by narrow streets and low-eaved homes whose walls had absorbed generations of laughter, tears, and whispered secrets. Faint lantern light glowed beneath the overhangs, illuminating pearls of raindrops sliding from the rooftops. It was a subdued sort of day, one where people preferred the comfort of hearth fires and steaming cups of tea. Sometimes a curious face peered out, glimpsing the slender figure in the street below, but the face always withdrew. The warm indoors felt too cozy to leave. Beneath the soft tapping of rain, a deeper hush lay across the town. Something about the Pied Piper seemed to command respect without uttering a single word. He wandered slowly, as though each step carried a purpose, even if that purpose remained hidden. Along the crumbling stone walls, faint moss and damp ivy clung, brightening the grey with a flash of green. The piper paused to run his fingers gently along the leaves, as if greeting the living things in his path. A rustle in the bushes hinted at a small creature scurrying away, but the piper didn't pursue it. The day was meant for quiet observation, for letting the hush permeate everything. A few streets over, a shy child glanced outside from behind a window curtain. She had heard stories of a mysterious musician who played mesmerizing tunes that could beckon the mind into enchanted slumber. In legends, he was either a savior or a trickster, leading his followers into hidden places. Today, though, there was only the sound of raindrops. The piper's flute remained silent, tucked snugly under his cloak. Could it be that the music was there, but simply too soft for mortal ears? Though he was the town's only true stranger, the piper was never entirely alone. Crows perched on thatched rooftops, rustling their feathers as the sky wept, watching him with keen, dark eyes. Somewhere in a locked barn, horses nickered quietly, restless from the weather, feeling the tension of the storm. But if the Pied Piper noticed, he offered only a tilt of the head in gentle acknowledgement, as though he recognized their curiosity and bore no ill will. By midday, the rain showed no signs of pausing, and the narrow roads shone like polished stone. Many believed the piper might disappear as quickly as he had arrived, perhaps slipping away through the old arched gateway leading to the forest path beyond. That path was rumored to vanish in storms, lost beneath puddles and swirling fog. Yet he stayed, strolling from one quiet lane to the next, all the while carrying that silent instrument. Within a modest cottage perched on a corner, an elderly woman dozed in a rocking chair, a quilt half finished on her lap. She had heard of the piper in her youth. Tales of him had always reached her ears in hushed, respectful tones. She had dreamt of his melodies many times, sweet tunes that lulled entire villages into an untroubled sleep. But as she napped, the raindrops provided their own lullaby, and the piper continued by her window without a sound. Further up the winding street, a small bakery exhaled scents of fresh bread and warm pastry, the sweetness tangled in the damp air. Even the piper paused briefly, raising his head to catch a waft of sugar and yeast. He closed his eyes, letting the aroma fill him, as though drawing from it a quiet comfort. But he did not enter, seeming content to let his senses merely taste the moment from a short distance. The clouds overhead drifted slowly, heavy and grey, as if the sky itself felt drowsy and sad. Tiny rivers formed in the gaps between cobblestones, converging at the curb to feed a trickle that ran into the gutter. Occasionally, a few droplets found their way down the piper's collar, but he did not shift or shiver. Instead, he walked with a measured grace, as if listening for a rhythm beyond human hearing. Step after step, he let the hush guide him. At times, the breeze carried the faint echo of children's laughter, sheltered inside homes as they made games to pass the rainy afternoon. The piper paused at one window, perhaps drawn by the giggles. He stood motionless, cloak unmoving, flute still hidden. Then, after a moment, he touched the brim of his hat politely, despite the children being invisible behind the veiled glass. It was an odd but gentle gesture, as though bestowing a silent blessing. Down a secluded alley, a street cat dozed on a stack of crates. At the piper's approach, the cat lifted its head and blinked, regarding this newcomer with sleepy curiosity. The piper crouched, resting on the balls of his feet, and offered a careful hand. The cat sniffed, then pressed its whiskers against his fingers. A faint purr was lost under the rain. For a long moment, they remained that way. Two quiet souls, sharing a subtle bond under the falling drops. As twilight approached, lanterns began to glow brighter in windows, and the smell of cooking stew drifted through the damp air. Doors remained shut. The chill of the storm deterred any typical evening stroll, but the piper lingered out in the open, letting the cooling drizzle slip across his gloved hands and trickle down his cloak. Moonlight, softened by thick clouds, occasionally glistened on his flute, illuminating the intricate carvings running along its surface. It seemed older than the piper, older than the town, older than memory itself. In a lonely corner of the marketplace stood a small well. Wooden boards covered its top, hammered in place to keep children from peering too far. The piper approached this ancient well, placing a hand lightly on the damp, mossy stone. He seemed to sense a story embedded in the rocks. Perhaps in ages past, families had gathered here to draw water, exchanging gossip and news. Maybe it had once been a bustling place of life and conversation. Now it stood silent, embraced only by the hush of the rainy day. The hush continued as the night deepened. Beyond the rooftops, hills rolled away into the darkness, dotted with forests that whispered secrets in the wind. Anyone who peered from behind curtains might have caught a glimpse of the piper meandering toward those hills, guided by the soft luminescence of distant lightning that flickered across the sky. If the townsfolk wondered where he was headed, or whether he'd be back, they had only the quiet shapes of shifting silhouettes to hint at his path. The hush of the rain was their only reply. Past a leaning signpost that pointed to seldom-traveled roads, the piper walked. Puddles grew into shallow ponds across the trail, reflecting the starless sky. Now and then, the lonely cry of an owl echoed from a hidden perch, and the piper gently lifted his gaze in acknowledgement. He remained outwardly calm, unhurried, as though time stretched infinitely before him. He had no pressing errands, no demands from the bustling world. He was simply drifting in the gentle currents of the rainy night. Eventually, he arrived at a bridge spanning a narrow ravine. The water below, dark and swift, churned with the runoff from the storm. The piper paused, resting his hands on the railing, gazing at the swirl of currents far beneath him. On a fair-weather day, travelers might have paused here to take in the view. But tonight, only shadows moved among the tall pines and slick rocks. Lightning flared again, followed by the low rumble of thunder, though the piper seemed untroubled, as if the storm was an old companion. For a brief instant, a memory might have flickered behind his eyes, a memory of music once played, of towns gathered in awe, of dancing feet and mesmerized hearts. Yet now the flute remained still, offering not a single note. Instead, the piper bowed his head, and the night embraced him in gentle darkness. The thunder rolled again, more distant this time, marking the slow passing of the storm. Continuing on, he followed a path that wound through a cluster of tall evergreens. Their needled branches dripped with fresh rain, sending quiet patters onto the forest floor. The scents of wet pine and cedar gathered in the cool air, wrapping him in an earthy perfume. The piper ran a hand along the bark of a towering tree, feeling its rough texture and acknowledging the life pulsing within. For a moment, he closed his eyes, letting the hush cradle him. Only the faint tip-tap of water slipping from leaf to leaf broke the silence. Beyond a gentle incline, the trees parted to reveal a small clearing. Fireflies danced there, their lights pulsing in and out in slow rhythms, as if mirroring the steady breathing of the forest. The piper paused at the edge, standing as still as the trunks behind him. One by one, the fireflies gathered near, swirling around him in shimmering arcs, their glow reflected in the droplets still clinging to his hair and cloak. In that clearing, it seemed every heartbeat was amplified, every soft breath made meaningful. Perhaps if someone had watched from afar, they would have expected the piper to finally raise his flute and coax a melody from the hush. After all, wasn't he known for that? But instead, he merely observed, letting nature's own lullaby fill the space. If there was a tune, it existed in the quiet communion between the hush of rainfall, the sparkle of fireflies, and the ancient presence of the forest. In due time, the piper took a seat on a fallen log, its surface dotted with patches of moss and tiny mushrooms. The ground was soft underfoot, sprinkled with glistening pine needles and the occasional fern. He set his flute gently on his knee, running a finger along its carved whorls, as though tracing memories held within the wood. The hush deepened, a calm hush that seemed to suspend time, unraveling knots of worry or restlessness. Even the forest creatures sensed this peace, their night calls growing softer, as if lulled by an unseen resonance. The hours slipped by in that tranquil place. Raindrops slowed to a delicate mist that brushed against the piper's face, cooling and cleansing. His eyes, half-lidded, watched the fireflies dance until they grew tired or vanished into the darkness. Now and again, a breeze would stir the branches overhead, shaking loose tiny showers of droplets, which sparkled momentarily before sinking into the earth. It was a world undone from hurry or noise, given over entirely to rest. When the rain finally paused, the piper stood and stretched, his limbs uncoiling like a cat waking from a nap. He glanced toward the path he had come from, perhaps remembering the silent streets and shuttered windows of the town. A faint smile touched his lips, though no one was there to witness it. He gathered himself, tightening his cloak against the lingering dampness, and continued across the clearing to where another path beckoned, lined with stones half buried in soft loam. This new trail led deeper into the forest, where the canopy grew denser. The occasional glow of a distant lantern or the faraway flicker of lightning was replaced by the complete hush of ancient trees. Their trunks rose like grand pillars in a cathedral of leaves, and every so often, a leftover raindrop fell with a gentle plop. The piper's boots made little sound, as though the moss beneath them cushioned each step out of respect for his quiet ways. Far within the woods, he came upon an old stone arch, half covered in vines. It might have been a forgotten gate to a manor long crumbled into dust, or perhaps it led to a secret glade few knew existed. The air beneath the arch felt cooler, almost electrified, as though crossing that threshold led into a place of subtle magic. The piper stood there for a time, letting his gaze wander across the etched symbols in the worn stone. No urgency rushed him. In the hush, he moved as naturally as the slow drift of clouds across the sky. Beyond the arch, the terrain sank into a gentle valley. A shallow stream meandered through ferns and wildflowers. The storm had left droplets clinging to the petals, like tiny crystals shining in the night. There, on the banks, a startled fawn lifted its head. The piper paused, meeting the creature's wide-eyed gaze. Neither moved. Then, with a small hop, the fawn darted away, perhaps uncertain of this quiet stranger. The piper bowed slightly, as if apologizing for intruding. Still holding his flute, he followed the stream, letting its gentle gurgling accompany him. Though no tune had been played, it seemed nature itself offered up a lullaby. The music of water on stones, the soft breeze through leaves, and the delicate chirp of crickets merged into a serene tapestry of sound. The piper's footsteps were so light that he might have been a mere phantom drifting through the forest. Eventually, the path ascended again, leading him to a clearing encircled by oak trees. Moonlight, though veiled by clouds, softly illuminated the clearing's center, where a circle of mushrooms formed a natural ring. Mist curled around each toadstool, giving them an ethereal glow. It was a place that seemed alive with old legends, the type of spot where fairy tales murmured in the hush of midnight. The piper, ever respectful, stood at the edge, his head bowed in silence. In stories, such rings are said to be dancing grounds for fairy folk or portals to unseen realms. Perhaps the piper recognized this, for he moved around the circle instead of through it, allowing the mushrooms their sacred boundary. As he walked, a cool breeze brushed past, carrying a faint whisper, like a sigh from beyond the ordinary world. He did not pause to investigate, merely acknowledging the presence of magic with a small tilt of his head. Beyond this enchanted clearing, the forest grew quiet once more, as if lulled back to sleep. The path branched, and the piper took the route leading toward a gentle hillside. There, among the birch trees, he finally found a humble shelter, a single stone cottage, dark and still. The cottage roof bore remnants of fallen leaves and twigs, battered by the rain. A dim lantern flickered in the window, suggesting someone was inside, keeping watch against the lonely night. The piper approached carefully. He did not knock or call out. Instead, he rested a hand on the weathered wooden door. It opened with a soft creak, revealing a simple interior lit by a single, wavering candle. A wooden table, a pair of chairs, a small hearth, plain, unadorned comfort. In one corner, a small bed was neatly made, a patchwork quilt folded at its foot. No occupant stirred, but the warmth of a dying fire in the hearth suggested the cottage was tended, if not currently inhabited. He lingered at the threshold, weighing whether to enter. His presence had always been more of a visitation than a stay. Yet the hush invited him in, as though saying, "Rest here." He crossed the stone floor, removed his damp cloak, and draped it over the back of a chair. The flute he placed gently on the table. When he leaned toward the hearth, he saw that only embers remained. With careful hands, he added a bit of wood from a nearby pile, coaxing the fire back to a gentle glow. Soon, soft warmth spread through the cottage. In that fire-lit stillness, the piper allowed himself a rare moment of vulnerability. He sat on the floor beside the hearth, legs folded beneath him, gazing at the dancing flames. Their light revealed the lines of travel etched into his face, the subtle worry or wisdom near his eyes. Outside, the last remnants of a rain tapped gently on the roof, a lullaby from the night sky. The hush was complete. Perhaps he closed his eyes. Perhaps he let old memories drift in, recalling the day's quiet stroll through the town, the glimpses of curious children behind curtains, the purring cat, the hush of the well, the forest's hidden paths, the circle of mushrooms, and the silent ring of fireflies. All these images seemed to settle in his mind, becoming part of a tapestry woven out of calm and comfort. In that hush, he felt no need to speak, to play, or to disturb the silence that had become his companion. Instead, he allowed the natural rhythm of his breath to align with the gentle crackling of the fire, the occasional drip from the eaves, and the steady beat of his own heart. The hush was enough. It was a language in itself, more powerful than any melody he might produce. By the time the embers glowed low once more, the piper had drifted into a half-dream, lulled by the serenity of the moment. Outside, the storm clouds parted, revealing the faint outline of stars and a slice of moon. The forest breathed its nightly whispers, untroubled by the passing hours. The hush remained, a soft cloak enveloping everything in a gentle embrace. When morning approached, the sky grew lighter with the earliest hints of dawn. The piper stirred, opening his eyes to see the faintest glow at the window. He rose, stretching limbs stiff from sitting on the floor. Without rush or fuss, he gathered his belongings. The fire had grown cold again, leaving only ashes to show it had once burned. Before he left, he replaced the wood he had taken from the pile, neatly stacking extra kindling as a quiet token of thanks to whoever tended this place. With cloak on his shoulders and flute in hand, he slipped out of the cottage. The air outside felt fresh, cleansed by the night's rain. A thin fog drifted among the birch trunks, and rays of pale morning light filtered through, gilding the scene with a gentle brightness. He breathed deeply, letting that crisp, clean air fill him. Then, with steady, unhurried steps, he followed the path back toward the town. The hush accompanied him, like an old friend who never asked for anything, only offered quiet comfort. Meanwhile, in the town below, the dawn brought a fresh start. Beams of sunlight glinted off puddles in the streets, and the worn cobblestones sparkled as if sprinkled with bits of starlight. Townsfolk began to venture outside, carefully stepping around patches of muddy water. Children, restless from a day indoors, bounded onto porches, splashing in leftover rain. cats emerged from their shelter, tails high, scanning for a warm patch of sun. And there, in the distance, the Pied Piper could be seen re-entering the outskirts, cloak trailing behind him like a shadow. Some curious souls might have approached him had they been braver, asking why he carried a flute he never played. But they only watched from a respectful distance, perhaps sensing there was more to his presence than mere novelty. The piper, for his part, offered a faint nod to those he passed. He moved in that same calm, measured way, as though guided by an inaudible melody. The hush now mingled with the morning's soft bustle, creating a gentle counterpoint to everyday life. A child, the same one who had peeked from behind the curtain the previous day, spotted him from her doorstep. She mustered the courage to wave shyly, and the piper paused to return the gesture with the tilt of his hat. Though no words were spoken, the moment felt like a kind promise, a hint that this day could hold unexpected enchantment if one remained open to the subtle wonders. In the quiet corners of the marketplace, where vendors wiped down rain-soaked stalls, the piper walked. Here and there, a flower vendor adjusted a bouquet, dew glistening on the petals like little diamonds. The piper paused to admire the blossoms, lilies, roses, and small blue forget-me-nots. The vendor, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, smiled at him, though she spoke not a word. Her gaze carried both curiosity and a gentle acceptance. She offered a single bloom, a simple gesture of warmth. The piper inclined his head in gratitude, slipping the flower into his cloak's inner pocket as he moved on. The hush he carried seemed to soften the usual clamor. Horses pulling carts trotted more quietly, their hooves making subdued clops on the damp stones. Even the clang of a blacksmith's hammer from a nearby smithy seemed muffled, blending with the ambient murmur of the town. The piper's presence was neither imposing nor intrusive. It was merely a gentle invitation to notice the beauty in small sounds, in the fresh smell of post-rain air, in the way sunlight glinted on puddles. As the morning progressed, some townspeople gathered in the central square to exchange their usual greetings or trade goods. The piper stood at the edge, observing with a mild fascination. Children chased each other in playful squeals, and occasionally they'd cast quick glances his way, as if expecting him to lift his flute and summon an enchanting tune. But still, the flute remained silent. Perhaps in that hush there was a deeper lesson, one of patience, of listening to the rhythms already present in every corner of life. Eventually, the piper turned toward the gate that led out of town, the same one he had presumably entered by in the past. Fields of wheat and lavender stretched beyond, offering a soft patchwork of gold and purple under the rising sun. He paused near the weathered archway, running his hand along the old stones. A few townsfolk gathered at a respectful distance, watching him. When he glanced back, he offered a slight, reassuring smile, an acknowledgement of their silent camaraderie. In the hush of that moment, the piper raised the flute to his lips. No melody emerged, only a single breath of air that whispered across the mouthpiece. Yet, in the quiet, that breath felt like a promise, a gentle sign that he carried something more than mere silence. Then he lowered the flute again, tucking it under his cloak. With a bow to the onlookers, he turned and ventured out of the town, his steps carrying him along the winding road. Behind him, life resumed its ebb and flow. The hush had not vanished. It lingered like a soft memory in the hearts of those who had witnessed his presence. Perhaps they would one day tell tales to their children of the Pied Piper's silent tune, describing how even the absence of notes could be soothing, how sometimes the greatest gifts are those that encourage one to listen more deeply to the world. Now that the story has wandered from rainy streets to quiet forests and back again, let your thoughts drift as well. Feel the gentle weight of fatigue settle into your body, each limb growing heavier, your breath becoming even slower. If your eyes are not yet closed, allow them to close softly, welcoming the darkness behind your eyelids. Notice how your body sinks deeper into your bed or wherever you rest, as though the hush from the piper's journey has found you too. Let each slow breath guide you further into relaxation. Inhale gently, envisioning the soft glow of dawn breaking through the clouds. Exhale, releasing any tension that might remain. Imagine that each breath brings you the peace of the silent tune, a tune that doesn't need to be heard to work its quiet magic. With each exhale, your mind becomes calmer, letting go of any lingering worries or to-do lists. Feel the hush of the story wrap around you like a warm cloak, comforting and protective. Picture the raindrops, the subtle shimmer of puddles on cobblestones, the calm, dim light shining behind shuttered windows. The echoes of those scenes now rest gently in your mind, a lullaby of images. You no longer need to explore them. You can simply let them carry you toward a deeper, more peaceful state. Your breathing is steady and rhythmic. Like the piper's measured steps, it is unhurried and soothing. Each slow inhale gathers tranquility. Each even slower exhale disperses any tightness in your muscles or anxious thoughts in your mind. The hush fills the room, surrounds you, and seeps into every corner of your awareness, ushering in a profound sense of comfort and surrender. Allow the day's events to fade into a distant background, replaced by the comforting murmurs of the night. The hush that accompanied the piper's silent tune now accompanies your own journey into slumber. Breathe, relax, and sink deeper. Here in this gentle space, you are perfectly safe, perfectly at ease. Rest now, dear traveler. Let the last threads of wakefulness dissolve. May the hush of the Pied Piper's silent tune cradle you, guiding you into a deep and restorative sleep. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.